do not go to Costa Rica before watching this video. Trust me. If you are planning a trip to Costa Rica this year and are ultimately trying to plan out where to go and how to best spend your time in this beautiful country, then this video is for you. For those of you who are new here, my name is Emma and I have spent almost half my life traveling the world. I have been to over 40 countries and spent 7 years as a flight attendant, and Costa Rica is one of my favorite places on the planet. I've been to Costa Rica maybe 5 times now, and most recently this year where I spent 3 months traveling the entire Pacific coast and some iconic little inland spots that I'm going to share with you in this video. I'm going to talk about the mistakes I made, the hidden gems that I discovered, the absolute spots that you cannot miss, and the tourist traps that you should definitely skip. I'll also do my best to give you an overview on where to go and how long to stay in each location so that you can make the best of your trip to Costa Rica. Let's dive in. Costa Rica is the most visited country in all of Central America, and that is just crazy. But honestly, I get it. They have amazing coffee, incredible wildlife, beaches, jungles. There is no short supply of things to do in Costa Rica. It is incredibly safe. It is also considered to be the most developed and educated country in Central America, boasting incredible tourism infrastructure and opportunities for foreign investment and businesses. From the incredible wildlife sighting and surfing barrel waves in laid-back beach towns or ziplining through clouded forests, Costa Rica is the perfect location for adventurous souls. Does that sound familiar? I'm not joking when I tell you all of that is possible to experience in Costa Rica. I did it, and I didn't really have to look that hard. It is exactly what you dream of it being and more. I honestly like to say that Costa Rica is like the Disneyland for nature lovers, because literally nature is everywhere and you will see all of those amazing animals. Trust me. Let's talk about planning your itinerary. So the first step in planning your ultimate trip to Costa Rica is to decide what your main interests are, because this is going to help you in selecting areas of the country to visit. Now, if we're talking about how much time is a good amount of time to spend in Costa Rica, of course, the more time the better, but can you have an amazing trip with just 1 week? Absolutely. That being said, do I think that you should spread yourself too thin and try and hit all of these different coastal areas in a week? No. 1 week to me is 1 to 2 locations max. The last thing that you want to do when you're on vacation is spend all of your time driving or stuck in the back of a hot, sweaty bus. And that is what's realistic when you are trying to cover a lot of ground in Costa Rica. So that's an important thing to consider when planning your trip. I really do think that you can select 1 to 2 areas and still be super happy with what you got to see and experience. I think that one of the easiest loops that you can do if you have 1 to 2 weeks is to fly into Liberia, which is one of the 2 main airports in the country. Flying into Liberia gives you relatively easy access to the coast and to the mountains. You're about a 2 to 3 hour drive each way. However, you still are a bit of a hike. Costa Rica is not one of those countries that you can fly into and be at the beach within 20 minutes. You have a bit of a drive to get anywhere worth going, in my opinion. The next thing you want to think about is what type of activities you want to do while visiting Costa Rica. Activities always enhance an experience, and there are so many things to do here. Do you want to go hiking? Do you want to go surfing, horseback riding, zip lining? Do you want to do coffee tours, scuba diving? Like, what is it that you really want to do while you're there? You might be thinking, I want to do everything. Okay, you might not be able to do everything in 1 week. 2 weeks? Okay, maybe, yeah, I can see it happening. But you really need to be super realistic about what you can accomplish based on the amount of time that you have. And I think that this is a really important place to start when planning any trip, because if you're not really much of a beach person and you really want to see wildlife, then I wouldn't recommend going to the coastline or going to the northern part of the country, flying into Liberia. I would recommend flying into the other airport in San Jose and accessing Monteverde Cloud Forest or Arenal Volcano. Obviously, those are like the 2 most hyped hyped national parks in Costa Rica, and there are so many more. But ultimately, the southern part of the country tends to be a bit more biodiverse, lush, and wet. The northern part of the country is a lot more dry. You don't really see any sloths in that area, but you can still see scarlet macaws, beautiful insects, amphibians, and yeah, lots more. The first few times that I went to Costa Rica, I only did the coast, and this past time I went inland. I went to Arenal Volcano, I went to Cloud Forest, and I went to a few other hidden gems that I'm going to share with you that were absolutely spectacular. And honestly, my entire opinion has changed on Costa Rica. I don't think that you should go and leave without seeing the inland volcanic areas, because the mountains are just so incredible. Even if you're thinking, I want a vacation, I want to lay on the beach, I want to relax, maybe pick a Caribbean location, maybe go to Mexico, maybe go somewhere where the beaches are a lot more quintessential, if you will. The beaches in Costa Rica are totally different. They're absolutely stunning, of course, but they're a lot more wild, a lot more rugged. You've got black sand beaches. You don't really experience the powder white sand like you would in the Caribbean. So if you're wanting to plan like a beach getaway, maybe look at staying in an all-inclusive in one of the many resorts that are in Costa Rica and doing day trips from there. I definitely recommend renting a vehicle when visiting Costa Rica. It goes without saying that having your own wheels, especially when you are adventuring around, makes your life so much easier. I also found that when comparing the cost of renting a car versus private taxis, shuttles, and everything in between, ultimately came out to being very similar. And if I could go with renting my own car and not having the headache of needing to look at shuttle times and scheduling and booking things in advance, like it goes without saying to absolutely rent your own car, because trust me, it will make such a difference in your action-packed vacation. Like honestly, if I can recommend anything, it's to budget for renting a vehicle. Like make it top of mind. Unless you are literally going to one town, planting yourself there and not leaving, rent a car. Okay, let's talk about the north versus the south of Costa Rica. I've created this map that will help me best explain the layout of the country. First, you gotta decide which airport you're flying into, and this might be based on the best airfare price that you find, or maybe your city only flies to one or the other, because ultimately that is going to determine the overall itinerary of your trip. Liberia Airport is in the north of the country, and San Jose is more in the south central part of the country. This is a super unofficial line that I drew to mark off the north and south parts of Costa Rica, although there are 7 official provinces. This is just how my brain looks at it. So like I said, last winter I spent 3 months driving the entire coast. I flew into San Jose and then drove 4 hours down to Drake Bay. I then spent about a week in the most biodiverse place on earth, Corcovado. This is definitely not for the faint of heart, as it is quite a trek to get here, but if you love wildlife, this is one of the best national parks you can visit in the country. I really loved the southern part of the country. It was so lush, so green, and really not a lot of tourists were down there during peak season. This is obviously due to its proximity to the airport, because not many people want to drive 4 hours from San Jose to get to where they're going. But because we had time, we were happy to do it. If you're thinking about visiting Corcovado, I definitely recommend staying in a town called Ojochal. This ended up being one of my favorite parts in the whole country. There were so many amazing restaurants, beautiful beaches. I got to release sea turtles here totally on a whim with a local conservational group. And yeah, there was just hiking, pickleball, everything you wanted to do and see, I got to see and do in Ojochal. I also kind of found that the south of the country was in general less touristy and had better prices, but keep in mind that Costa Rica is not a cheap country. I live in Ottawa, Canada, and I found that it had Ottawa prices, but in US dollars, which is not cheap. This was the accommodations that we stayed at in Ojochal. It was really great value. There was a pool. You were walking distance to beaches. We also had a funny experience with bats being in our little room. This is their home. We actually rented it from the bats, and they're just chilling. Oh God. Obviously the bats don't bite, they're totally harmless. So if it's not your thing, keep that in mind. But I thought it was really cool. Now again, this is just my opinion, but Costa Rica can kind of be broken up into 4 regions, if you will. Like we've got the northern coastal towns, we've got the southern coastal towns. We've got the Caribbean side, which I've never visited, but I've heard is a total vibe. And then we have the 4th inland iconic forested national parks like Monteverde Cloud Forest and La Fortuna or Arenal Volcano. 2 separate locations that have very similar vibes and experiences of wet, lush jungles that are definitely worth exploring. These are the categories that you can think about when planning your trip. And if you're traveling with kids or elderly parents, you want to keep your driving to a minimum. And I would say if you have 1 to 2 weeks to kind of pick one of those 4 regions and stick to it. That being said, I do think that you can do Arenal and a coastal town. You can do Monteverde and a coastal town. You will end up driving a bit more, but I think it's totally worth it because after going to La Fortuna or Arenal, La Fortuna is the town that is beside Arenal Volcano. It's super iconic, it's really touristy, but honestly, this is one of those places that I think is touristy for a reason. Like there is just so much to do. This is the accommodations that I stayed at, La Princesa de la Luna. It was really inexpensive and I got my own hut in the jungle with a view of the volcano and toucans literally outside of my window waking me up every morning. Like, I'm sorry, what? Only in Costa Rica. Inland is where you can also do things like chocolate tours, visit cacao farms, go to coffee plantations, do some coffee tastings, but a lot of it will exist in the mountains because of the elevation in what farmers are actually able to grow. The southern part of Costa Rica is a lot lower in altitude. So this means more water, more lushness, more biodiversity in plants and animals. If you really want to see animals and a lot of different species, you have to go to the south. There's also a wildlife sanctuary in Dominical, another noteworthy part of the southern area of Costa Rica called Alturas. And this is a wildlife sanctuary that you can visit to see a lot of the native animals in Costa Rica. They rescue, rehabilitate, and release animals. So this is a way to not only support the local wildlife in this region, but also get a close-up encounter with some amazing animals. I actually have a video that I will link down below of my visit to Alturas. When you're thinking about the weather, it is great in both the north and southern regions of Costa Rica. It's more that the south gets a little bit more rain, but honestly, if you're planning on going in the North American winter months, so like December to March, you will have no problem with weather. It is sunny every day, a little spot of rain here and there, big deal, and like you really can't go wrong. There are lots of fresh rivers to swim in and amazing waterfalls. So if you love waterfalls, trust me, the northern coastal towns are not it for you. It's really, really dry. And there just aren't any of those iconic Costa Rican waterfalls that you're probably wanting to see while in Costa Rica. So you're gonna wanna keep that in mind. Fresh rivers and amazing waterfalls are more easily found in the south, and I really loved the beach towns in Uvita and Ojochal. The south is also where Manuel Antonio Park is, which is one of the biggest and busiest national parks in the entire country. I liked Manuel Antonio, but wouldn't recommend spending longer than 3 days there. It was a really hectic, touristy town that obviously I realize is busy for a reason. There is a lot to see and do there, but after a couple days, I was like, get me out of here. This is not the vibe. And I carried on to other areas. Okay, the northern part of Costa Rica is a lot drier. Like it is so dusty that a lot of the vegetation is more like cacti. Everything is covered in dust and dirt from the roads and people driving. You definitely have to wear like a mask if you're riding on a motorcycle or you rent an ATV because you're literally breathing in so much dust and dirt. Like it isn't the end of the world because some of my favorite places in Costa Rica are in the northern part. Playa Guiones, Nosara, Samara are some amazing beach towns that I definitely recommend you visit, but you will not find waterfalls here, at least not like the ones that you can see down south. You can do day trips to waterfalls. Like Rio Celeste is one of the most iconic waterfalls in Costa Rica, and you can get there from the northern coastal towns. I drove there from Samara, and it was like a 2.5-hour-ish drive one way, and the roads are really bad, but like it's totally worth it because it is absolutely a spectacle to see. So it's not to say that if you stay in the northern Pacific coastal beach towns, you will not have any opportunity to see waterfalls. You will just end up making a day trip out of it. No big deal. You will definitely see a lot of howler monkeys in the north and south. Honestly, this species of monkey is everywhere. Like, you will be pretty hard pressed to go all the way to Costa Rica and not see monkeys. Like, they are the equivalent to squirrels here in North America. Honestly, they're just everywhere. It's so cool waking up and hearing them howling first thing in the morning. Like, it almost sounds like dogs howling or barking, but it's actually these amazing monkeys. One of my favorite northern coastal beach towns is Playa Guiones, or anywhere in Nosara, Nicoya Peninsula, which is dubbed as one of the world's blue zones, which is basically a geographical area where people tend to live longer and happier lives based on their lifestyle, food, and culture. You can definitely feel this vibe when you're in Nosara. It's just so laid back, so beautiful, and there's just something really special about it. Another really cool thing to do in Samara or Playa Guiones is a gyrocopter ride. This is offered just in between Playa Guiones and Samara and is about $100 to $150 for a 15 to 20 minute ride in this like 2-person helicopter. It is so fun, so cool. You get to fly over Mel Gibson's old house, which sold for like millions of dollars recently, and it's just a really cool way to see Costa Rica from a totally different perspective. I have a full video of that as well that I will link in the description down below. Another area that is again quite a trek to get to, but is totally worth it when you arrive there, is Santa Teresa, which is just sort of at the very tip of the peninsula of the northern part of the country in the Gulf of Nicoya. Santa Teresa was one of the first super surfy towns that were established, and it's really developed. There's a lot of cafes, restaurants, like clubs if you're wanting to go somewhere to like party and have a good time, but also have like your sleepy, chill vibes. Definitely check out Santa Teresa. I really enjoyed our time there. We stayed in both of the Salinas. Both of them were amazing. In fact, I stayed in a Salina in almost every single town that I could stay in, and the Salinas in Costa Rica are amazing. I am planning on making a whole video about those, so let me know in the comments down below if you'd like me to review. Okay, now let's go a little bit more north of Santa Teresa and Samara, which will bring us to an area that is a lot closer to Liberia Airport and a lot more accessible, which is probably why it is so freaking touristy. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm gonna say it. Tamarindo is a pass, a hard pass. I unfortunately spent 5 days there, and you know what, honestly, I'm not gonna lie, by day 4, I liked it a little bit more. The beach, without a doubt, 100%, is the worst beach in Costa Rica. Like, I'm sorry, I said it. Obviously, this is super subjective and everyone's going to have their own opinions on beaches, but it was so busy. It was, oh my God, it was just packed. Like, you could not have a serene, private, quiet moment on that beach. There's just no way. But Tamarindo is close to a few other beaches that are incredible. So if staying in Tamarindo is your only or best option, like, go for it. But I would definitely recommend going slightly north, like right beside Tamarindo is Playa Grande. That beach is amazing, totally untouched. Like, it's humongous and you can really have like a private, quiet moment there. And then another beach that's a little bit more south of Tamarindo is called Playa Avellanes, and it's known as like the little Hawaii of Costa Rica. At least that's what I've heard. And it is really picturesque, really pretty. It's apparently like in the up and up of a new developing area, and I can definitely see why. Even more north of Tamarindo is Brasalitas, Playa Potrero, and Las Catalinas. Las Catalinas was a cool spot that I visited. It has a very like European flair, European vibe. There was randomly like a Patagonia store there. So I feel like it's quite a bit more developed and tailored to a different sort of clientele. Like honestly, it felt like I was walking the streets of Spain. It was so different than any other part of Costa Rica, but it was also quite expensive. Okay, let's talk volcanoes, hot springs, hiking, and ziplining. While you certainly can find most of these activities on the Pacific coast, the best places to do these are inland. I really enjoyed La Fortuna Arenal, but you can also experience this in Monteverde Cloud Forest. Arenal has great hikes. I did the 1968 Volcano Trail, which was a $20 entry fee and delivered a truly spectacular view of Arenal Volcano. There was even a little coffee shop at the end of the trail where you could sit down, have a coffee, and just take in the surrounding coffee fields where the coffee that you were drinking came from. It was amazing. I read a book here and it was just like one of my favorite memories of Costa Rica. It's important to note that you can't actually hike Arenal Volcano. It is a protected area. And this volcano is also still considered to be active. So most of the hikes that you're doing in La Fortuna are all just around the volcano, but you end up having the most spectacular views of it. I also went to Mystico Hanging Bridge Park, which was one of the trails that I did. You get to literally walk through a cloud forest. So even though this wasn't Monteverde, I still got to kind of like check that box. I hired a tour guide. We saw snakes, birds, amphibians, like it was really cool. And this is also an area where I did a night hike. Absolutely cannot recommend doing a night hike enough. You will see so many more species than you will see during the day, because the reality is a lot of the animals in Costa Rica are nocturnal, so you have a better chance of seeing them when they are more active at night. We saw so many species of animals. My favorite red-eyed tree frog, and insanely enough, the most deadly snake in all of Costa Rica, the venomous fer de lance, which was so cool to see in real life. Like it's pretty much a guarantee that you're going to see incredible wildlife if you go to this area of Costa Rica. La Fortuna also had just like so many cute little coffee shops. There's chocolate everywhere. There's coffee everywhere. Like it's really a spot where you can like taste the Pura Vida life. Don't go there without a rain jacket though, okay? Don't pull a me and go all the way to Costa Rica for 3 months and think, oh my God, it's gonna be hot and sunny every single day, which it is on the coast. But if you're planning on going inland and doing any of this like volcano, jungle exploring, like bring a rain jacket. They don't sell them there. Like, I mean, they probably do, I just couldn't find one. So don't forget to pack your rain jacket. Okay, another thing that you absolutely cannot go to Costa Rica and not experience are the hot springs. I'm sorry, whether you like spas or not, there is something so magical about sitting in a natural hot spring that is being heated by volcanic activity. Like the minerals in this water that are being directly absorbed into your skin, it really hits differently. Arenal is very well known for the multitude of hotels and resorts and hot springs. I actually did a full video about the free versus paid hot springs in Costa Rica. I will link that in the description down below, because it can be very overwhelming when you're trying to decide where to go and what to do. But there are free hot springs that you absolutely have to check out. And honestly, in my opinion, also do a paid hot spring. It's just like the perfect thing to add to an itinerary, especially if you are doing a lot of activities. Because obviously it's also a vacation, I'm sure, at the end of the day, so make sure to schedule yourself in some downtime, and that is the best way to do it in my opinion. These magically, naturally heated hot waters are filled with medicinal minerals from the volcanic activity happening below ground. Okay, moving on. I'm saving the best for last, which is my hidden gem that I discovered while I was researching epic waterfalls in Costa Rica. I did make an entire video about the quote unquote most beautiful waterfall that you can see in Costa Rica. Like, again, this is subjective, but I found out about this place from the locals. And it ain't easy to get there, and they ain't advertising it. which in my opinion always ends up being like the best spot. So that waterfall is called Quebrada Gata, and the place that I stayed in order to access this waterfall, because it really is off the beaten path, like you have to hire a tour guide that is, again, like it's not shady, but it is like technically illegal to go there because it's dangerous. However, if you hire the right guide, which I did, there's only one guide to book with, 360 Amarillo Tours, I think is what he was called. I will link his details in the description down below. Like, he's the only guide to book with. His name is Ken. He's totally experienced. He's done this hike like over 150 times. He's the best person to go with. He's the only person to go with if you are looking for like an absolutely insane waterfall and you also just kind of want to experience a little off the beaten path, unique part of Costa Rica. I recommend checking out Recreo Verde, which is kind of like an upscale campground in Costa Rica. It's maybe a 2-hour drive from San Jose. It really is like such a unique experience. You're camping with locals. I didn't see any other gringos the whole time I was there. They have their own medicinal hot springs there that are free to use if you're camping. They also have, and what I stayed in, actual little like cabins, little huts, and they were so inexpensive. This is just a really cool way to like camp in Costa Rica, have pretty easy access to Quebrada Gata Falls, and just see a part of the country that I don't think a lot of people get a chance to see. The hot springs at Recreo Verde are well known for being one of, if not the most medicinally healing hot springs in the entire country. Again, I made a whole video about this place right here, and you can watch it in the description down below. It's totally worth the visit. Another thing that I'll recommend you do if you're flying into San Jose is checking out the Starbucks Hacienda location. This is the only Starbucks coffee farm in the entire world, and if you are a Starbucks fan, this absolutely needs to be on your list. You can book tours there or just go and check out their little cafe. They have amazing merch, they have a gorgeous view, and they have a menu that you can't experience anywhere else in the world. I obviously, again, made a whole video about that experience here, and I will link it in the description down below. The Starbucks Hacienda farm is maybe 40 minutes away from San Jose. So again, I think it's like totally worth the visit if you want to check out a cool coffee farm in Costa Rica. Okay, that was a lot of information and I still feel like I didn't get to cover it all. Again, this is just my personal experience of Costa Rica. There is so much information out there, so take your time in planning out your trip. And if you are looking for more details about any of the number of things that I mentioned throughout this video, check out the rest of my channel because I made so many individual videos about Costa Rica to better help you plan your amazing adventure there. This country is so magical and it really does hold a special place in my heart. So if I can give any real piece of advice and takeaways, it's to take your time, go slow, and really just immerse yourself in the Pura Vida magic that is Costa Rica. Enjoy every fleeting moment instead of trying to cram in every possible experience, because honestly, I think that that leads to a much more fulfilling trip. Prioritize your dream experiences and make them happen. If you like this video or feel like there's something I missed, or maybe that you'd like me to go into a little bit more detail about, please leave me a comment down below. Give me a thumbs up. It helps my growing channel so much. And also consider subscribing because this is just one of many travel inspired videos that I will be sharing here on my channel. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. I am at Terra right here, and we will see you in the next video. Happy travels.